and I watched this black boy and his white friends and his black friends and his Asian friends, and they come together and they play their Fortnite, and they're just so clear-eyed and innocent and naive about all of these issues. And I feel a level of hope that maybe it won't be as difficult as Ta-Nehisi Coates describes it in his book Between the World and Me to his son, because the idea that one day my son will grow up and then he'll have that race consciousness foisted on him. It's a heartbreaking thought for a parent. I watched this happen with my daughter. I'm already answering my own question. He's going to become conscious of it one day. My daughter, I brought up earlier how segregated New Jersey is racially. And she asked me, we don't live too far from Newark. And our first house in this town was not too far from an apartment complex in Newark on the edge of town. Then you cross over into our town. And everybody who lives in this highly dense, high rise apartment complex almost looks like a housing project. Everybody that lives there is Black or Latino or a person of color. And then you go into my town. And yeah, there's some Black families in our town, but then, you get the nice big mansions and you get the nice houses up the hill. And most of the people that live in those types of places are white. And so my daughter asked me, I think she was maybe in the second grade, and she said, Daddy, how come all the brown people live like that and all the white people live like that? They can see and feel that something is amiss around the issue of skin color and race in this country. And, in fairness to the folks that don't want to learn about critical race theory or they don't want to learn about the 1619 Project, yeah, none of you were around when this stuff happened. You weren't around for slavery, you weren't around for segregation. But those of us who are alive now, we're in our primes now. We inherited this world as it was left to us. And there are some congenital defects in this country on that issue of race. And have we made progress? Yeah, we have. It's no question. I'm glad to be alive in 2025. I wouldn't want to be a Black person in 1825 in this country. Yes, we've made some progress, but there's still some structural forces that are leading to certain types of outcomes for people when they're born under certain socioeconomic circumstances. And those folks that are born into those circumstances are disproportionately Black. There's a lot of white people getting left behind too, economically. But a lot of these folks are Black, and we keep, this racial wealth gap, it keeps perpetuating. And, I came across a data point, and again, I'm sure somebody could pick this apart, but, by 2053, Black people are on track to have a median wealth in this country of zero. And I've seen some other data that would challenge that and suggest that we might be moving in a more hopeful direction. But there still continues to be a major gap. And I think about what I inherited from my dad when he passed. My dad was a good dude. I inherited a ring from my father. He wasn't a bad dude. He was a good man. He blessed me with my charisma. I owe my identity to that man, but he was born into certain circumstances. And, I'm trying to live my life in such a way that when it's my time to leave, that, my children and their children will have more than what I was given. But there are structural forces that are leading to outcomes for folks that can only really be solved with policy.
You know what?
And
I'm trying to solve it a different way. I
yeah,
want to bring something up here to your attention. So, and just
yeah,
for your reflection. So, um, you just talked about, legacy, right? And what you want to, and that you want better, and more for your children than what you got, and that's part of what you want to leave. And you also said that your son developing a racial consciousness, a race consciousness, that is, you kind of characterize that as a negative thing. And I want you to flip that on its head. I want you to realize that developing a race consciousness does not have to be a negative thing. You know, that's meaning that it's about the meaning that we give to that.
Mm.
And that's kind of the core of the work that I'm going to be doing for the next several years. I'm going to be hosting anti-racism forums where I get people together and I kind of walk them through a framework to understand how to decondition themselves from some of the racial myths that are out there right now. And I think that the reason why I'm doing that work and the reason why I'm guiding people through this process, because at the end of that process, it becomes the universe of thought that includes you understanding that developing a racial consciousness doesn't have to be a bad thing. A
I love that.
possibility opens for you to see that it could be a good thing, that it could be actually empowering. Like that is actually something that is possible that we don't even think it's possible in the world the way it is right now in the
Love
iteration,
that.
you know?
And that's the type of approach that might be more palatable to a greater number of people in this country
It's
across different
people are
backgrounds.
desperate for it. People don't even know they're desperate for it, but they are,
Yeah.
and uh the spaces that I've created for people and the feedback I've gotten, it belies that, and I'm just grateful that I'm actually grateful to be alive so that I can be empowered to do this work. So
Love
it
it.
is very empowering for me, and even though I spend a lot of my time thinking about race, even though I've seen a lot of terrible, terrible videos um, involving racism, and I've read a lot of awful stories. I've talked to many family members who have lost people who have been through all kinds of heinous and difficult situations and life changing circumstances on the basis of race. And yet, still, I'm very optimistic. I'm empowered. And every day, I've been teaching for hours today. I've been teaching math all day. And I'm here at night feeling energized, enjoying my time chatting with you, Justin, because I really feel like this is a critical time in human history, like I said before, because we're in the death throes of white supremacy. We're in the death throes of this race. You see your kid with all those different people from all those different racial categories and ethnicities and groups playing together because we're moving past this.
I love that.
We are moving past this.
I think most people want to move past it.
It's just going to be very messy and it's definitely not going to happen on its own. And I think that is something that people are desperately wanting. People are desperately wanting this to just somehow move on because enough time has passed. And that is not at all reasonable. It's just like extremely unreasonable. And unfortunately, I think that's where most people's mindsets are, regardless of how they're racialized. And so I'm really trying to wake people up in a way, give them a jolt to their system and be like, I'm not allowing y'all to sit back and not think about this. Now is the time. We need everybody involved and thinking about this subject matter. We need people developing a lens of race consciousness only so that we can discard it. We cannot discard something we don't have. Like, right now we've got a lot of automatons out here walking around with blinders. So that's why I brought that up, because I'm like, we can't, and somebody in the chat, wrote this. We cannot claim integrity, community, ally, trustworthiness, assist, to protect others, or evolve along with racism if we don yet another set of blinders. And I tend to agree. I think we have to be careful about limiting ourselves another way. And even you yourself said earlier, right? Like, you read everything. You read the Fox Newses. You read, you go out, and I'm the same way, brother. I take in all of it. That's why I ended up with Coleman Hughes, of all people. So I just think that we got to transfer that mindset to the subject of race. I know people are tired of it. I know people don't want to study, and I know people don't want to learn this. But frankly, this is a subject matter that is generational. It's multidimensional. It has an influence on our health, on our legal rights, on our safety, on our personhood, on our citizenship. We can't pretend Like, that is not the case. And I think that doing that, even in small doses, can negatively impact our journey towards a brighter future. And that's just food for thought for people out there, because that is a case I am going to be making, you know. So anyways, your reflections on that.
Yeah, I think that I like the notion that we must challenge the status quo around how we engage on this topic. When I use that topic, and when I bring up blinders, though, I'm using a very narrow framework for that, because I agree with what you're saying. But when I'm in corporate America and I'm trying to focus on my performance, I can't be led with that. I almost have to compartmentalize for the sake of my own mental well-being in these spaces. And in my final chapter, the chapter is called Leaning into Faith. And I don't talk about God in that chapter. I'm talking about faith in yourself. And, I bring up the experience of being in a corporate office. I was working at an asset management firm in 2016. And you remember the shock when Trump was first elected in 2016? Do you remember the shock? I mean, most of the country, most of us,
I mean,
we thought Hillary was going to win.
I remember not being shot. I remember most of the country being shot. I was not shot personally, but yeah, I remember, because a lot of
A
people
lot of us were. I think about that Dave Chappelle skit on Saturday Night Live when,
Yeah, I was Dave Chappelle in that skit.
I was more of the other people like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm having chest pains. I can't believe this. And I go to work the next day, and, the CEO says, it's a great day for America. And then I'm on our sales floor and I see a bunch of guys have those red hats on their desks. And I'm saying to myself, man, all of the blatant instances of racism from this particular candidate were not disqualifying for these people. And that was pretty, disappointing. And it was a very raw experience. Different experience than now, right? I was like you this time around. I thought that Trump was he was going to be the candidate, and I have a perspective on how we need to respond to the current environment. But to survive in that office in those days, and the recognition that this character was not seen as unelectable. I had to really just, okay, faith in yourself, man. Just focus on what it is that you can control in this space, and do not allow these external forces to dent your confidence in yourself. You almost have to have a level of delusional self-confidence in yourself when you're in these spaces. You can't just be happy to have a seat at the table. You got to make some noise while you're at the table. You can't be happy just to get your foot in the door. You got to bust that door open and hold it open and get other people in there. And, it requires a level of compartmentalization on your part. But I can't survive in this environment if I'm looking over my shoulder all the time, worrying about some racial boogeyman. I can't do that in corporate America.
Well,
But
yeah,
as
I
it
mean, nobody, I mean, you
yeah,
can't do that anywhere, right? Like, I mean, yeah.
but as it pertains to the broader point that you're sharing about us coming together as a nation and confronting these issues so that we can move, I don't want to say move past them because they're going to be with us, but like deal with them in a way that will allow us to embrace our common humanity,
Well said.
right? And I agree with everything that you're saying. I agree with the comment in the chat in that regard, that we cannot put blinders on. But, when I look at my son with his friends and I see how he is, I have hope that Black children might one day have the freedom to have a level of psychological safety, and that they're able to approach this world clear-eyed, with the innocence of these kids. We know that there's some demons lurking out there, right?
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.